Let's begin by joining our palms and recite. Homage to the fundamental teacher, Buddha Shakyamuni. Homage to the fundamental teacher, Buddha Shakyamuni. Homage to the fundamental teacher, Buddha Shakyamuni. Verses of opening of the Dharma. The unsurpassable, profound, and wondrous Dharma is difficult to encounter even in hundreds of millions of kalpas. Now I see it, hear it, receive and uphold it. I vow to understand the true meaning of the Tathagata. So welcome to the lecture number 5 of the explanation of the book, The Path to Buddhahood. Last lecture, we already started covering the praises to the Buddha gem, and we will continue. Stanza 7 says, "His wisdom is perfect, his compassion unlimited. Eliminating all obstructions, he has no residual habits. The 3 virtues are equal and perfect, but the manifestations of skillful means are different." So this is the stanza, verses from Master Yinshun and his own explanation. Moreover, the ancient nobles praised the Buddha through the 3 virtues: wisdom, compassion, and elimination of afflictions. These are the so-called the 3 virtues of the Buddha, right? So when we praise the Buddha, we are not idolizing this person or this figure. We are praising the virtues that he has achieved or realized. Okay, so we start with the first one, the virtue of wisdom. The wisdom of the Buddha is definitely perfect and complete, for it not only fully comprehends the fundamental nature of all phenomena, but also perceives the particular characteristics of all phenomena, their forms, functions, relationships, etc. So the fundamental nature of all phenomena, basically all phenomena, be it things, people, thoughts, anything, things that occur have a fundamental nature. And that fundamental nature, which we'll cover a lot more throughout the course, but it's basically sunyata. Sunyata. Everything arises due to causes and conditions. Everything ceases due to the lacking of causes and conditions. Okay. And then all phenomena, they have different forms, different functions, relationships. Those are different signs, different marks, different characteristics, or we call lakshanas of phenomena. And they have a so-called fundamental nature that they all share in common. Everything, inanimate object to animate beings, sentient beings. So the wisdom of the Buddha completely understands the present, the past, and the future. Meaning that wisdom of the Buddha is not only for this present, because let's just take Buddha Shakyamuni, who achieved Buddhahood here on this planet Earth, in the land, ancient land of India, as we know it. It's not only in the present, but in the past. Past without beginning, and into the future without end. Completely understands. From various aspects, it fully comprehends the different characteristics of all phenomena. Therefore, a Buddha is called one who possesses perfect wisdom over all phenomena. And in Sanskrit, that word is sarvata jnana. Okay. And there's a word in English, it's omniscience, meaning all-knowing. You might be wondering, so what does the Buddha know? Well, a pastor who kept his sheep was asking Buddha how to better tend, protect the sheep, he would tell them. Even someone pointed at a tree and said to the Buddha, do you know how many leaves there are on that tree? And the Buddha said, yes, but you don't need to know that. But I know an omniscient being, a Buddha, knows all phenomena. And even the Buddha said, what he taught us during his lifetime is nothing more than a speck of dust, like dirt under fingernail. That's how much he has told us and covered, right? Of course, he covered all the essence, but then as far as how the mundane world works, he knows it all, but he did not mention it all because most of the time he's covering things that pertains to our alleviation of suffering and also the elimination of suffering on earth. The pain and suffering of sentient beings unable to be resolved are nothing more than an absurdity caused by ignorance. All are pain and suffering. And then let's be very clear. When we are talking about this body, the pain and suffering of this body, it's built in, it's programmed, it's karmic. As soon as you're born with this innate pain and suffering. But that's not what really makes us suffer. I mean, the body, it's like tolerable, let's say. But most of our suffering are mental suffering. Caused by what? By ignorance. And it's due to the absurdity of our mind. Our mind runs around making the same mistakes over and over again, telling stories that are not true to oneself, to others, to society, and build frameworks that are against wisdom and just perpetuating our ignorance. So most of our suffering, or at least the suffering that we can actually do without, that we can deal with, is caused by ignorance, our own ignorance. Don't be the ones like, oh, I'm perfectly okay, but it's due to other people's ignorance I am suffering. No, it's our own ignorance. If you realize other people are ignorant about certain things and you see the ignorance, you will not suffer. You will feel compassion. You will understand. You would have patience. And you may even want to help. Not all the time, but for sure. The wisdom of the Buddha is perfect and complete. So it not only liberates himself, but also can liberate sentient beings through immeasurable, skillful means. Now, skillful means, and in English, and there's another word, it's called expedient means. And that word has to be in plural, means, okay? The wonderful function of wisdom. Many times in different sutras, when it talks about wisdom, instead of saying wisdom, it will mention skillful means. They are almost synonymous. But what's the difference? Wisdom is that which one realizes, but the way one applies the wisdom, the wonderful function of wisdom, that is called skillful means or expedient means. This is the praise of the virtue of the perfect and complete wisdom of the Buddha. Okay, so this is the first virtue. Let's go into the second virtue, which is about compassion. The great compassion of the Buddha is to alleviate suffering. It's not limited to one person, one situation, one ethnic group, one region, or one world, but the resolution of this mind extends to all worlds, all universes, all beings, all calamities that happen to beings. So the word compassion, in this sense, describing the virtue of the Buddha, includes, without any doubt, loving kindness, compassion, rejoice or altruistic joy, and equanimity. All those four Brahma Viharas are included in the compassion of the Buddha, and not to mention the great compassion of the Buddha, which is all encompassing, right? So just so you know, whenever we say compassion, the context can be as one aspect of the Brahma Vihara or compassion in the general sense, the great compassion of the Buddha. Yeah, depending on the context. The mind of compassion is so deep that it permeates even the bones and marrow. It is truly unlimited. So the expression permeating even the bones and marrows, or seeking through inwards into the bones and marrow, it's a very ancient Indian way of describing, like you become, you incorporate everything into yourself. So that great compassion of the Buddha is truly unlimited, without any limit, any border. And that's why the way a Buddhist practitioner knows if he's compassionate and if he's expanding his compassion is by asking oneself, am I clinging to my self-identity through my family name, the neighborhood I live in, the country I live in, or the politics of one party versus another, or a football club, like anything that you feel separate you from all beings is a lack of compassion. That compassion is definitely not like the Buddhas. So as a spiritual practitioner and a Buddhist, you should know, the more you practice the compassion of Buddhism, the less sense of politics, conflict, and all these countries versus countries. You will recognize the suffering being inflicted. You will see the victims. You will feel for the victims, but you will also feel the ignorance of the victimizers. So you're not standing on one side. You are standing on a higher ground, looking at everything and wishing that things get better, right? So I like to say, instead of saying that we are beings of the universe, so we are literally saying that we are like extraterrestrials, it's better just to say we are global citizens. As Buddhists on earth, we are global citizens. If bodhisattvas in the causal stage, non-retrogression, such as Avalokiteshvara, Kuan Yin, Kshitigarbha, Tizang, etc., are already extraordinary in their great compassion and great vow, what can be said of Buddhahood, of the Buddha? This is the praise of the virtue of the perfect and complete compassion of the Buddha. So if you're wondering what is the causal stage of non-retrogression, meaning the state where the bodhisattva no longer retrogresses, not like us. We advance 2 steps and then we fall back 1 step. And then we are always on this forward, backward motion. And it is already pretty good if you still go on the plus side. And if you go into negative, you are really retrogressing. But in the bodhisattva's perspective, the first stage that they need to reach to call non-retrogression is the non-retrogression of the bodhi mind, which is called the stage of joy. Okay. In the bodhisattva first stage of bodhisattva. And then the seventh stage, according to the Prajna Sutras, and then the eighth stage, according to the Avatamsaka Sutra, is the non-retrogression in the sense of the afflictions no longer arises. The affliction is down to the minimum, just enough to be able to be reborn on the human realm to continue the work, but not to the sense of causing suffering to the bodhisattva, him or herself. Bodhisattvas are already have such great compassion, and not to mention the Buddhas. So the virtue of wisdom and the virtue of compassion. Now we go on to the virtue of the elimination of afflictions. Some people have high wisdom but weak compassion. Others emphasize compassion but not wisdom. And some emphasize both compassion and wisdom. But due to the afflictions and impurities in their minds that have not been completely purified, their compassion and wisdom are not considered perfect. So here, let's explore this a little bit more. Some people have high wisdom but weak compassion. So what are we talking about here? Someone who dedicate themselves to the practice, that are very disciplined, and they read, they study, but someone says, once in a while, once a month maybe, would you like to go to the food court or help pack some food and give it to the needy, and then to the families? And go, oh no, I have a lot of homework, practice to do. I cannot afford to take time to help others. There's a great pursuit of the wisdom, but not really wisdom, it's knowledge actually. Or even the practice of achieving goals, how many thousands of times, 10,000 of times of recitation of the Buddha, and then it's all consumed with one's own practice of wisdom, but not compassion. But how do you apply your wisdom on sentient beings or humans if you don't do anything philanthropic? You don't do charity work. You don't deal with people. You don't mingle. How do you show your compassion? How do you practice your wisdom and the applied compassion? The skillful means, right? You can't. And okay, here, others emphasize compassion, but not with, I got so much charity work to do. I'm light enough. I have to work on the weekdays, and then weekends, I'm all full. I have to do this, volunteer, that volunteer. Sorry, Shifu, I can't listen to the lecture. And I go, oh, don't worry. You can listen to a lecture later, either the YouTube channel, the video. Go, oh, no, sorry. I don't have time for that either because every weekend is taken up. I have no time during weekday. I'm always consumed with helping others. Helping others with what? What's your tool? What's your knowledge? What are your abilities? Without wisdom, can you truly practice compassion? Think about it. So there are some people who actually take care of compassion and wisdom practices, but due to their afflictions, meaning greed, hatred, and ignorance, impurities in their mind that have not been completely purified, then they're not able to truly connect with the compassion nor the wisdom of the Buddha, right? So only the Tathagata, which is one of the 10 epithets of the Buddha completely eliminates all afflictions, conceptual obstructions, factual obstructions, and has not even a trace of residual habit. This is the praise of the perfect and complete virtue of eliminating afflictions of the Buddha, or the elimination of afflictions. And so what is residual habit? I'm sure you're all curious. This is one of the hardest things. It is one of the most noted differences between the practice of Bodhisattva path and versus the arhat path. The way we view residual habits. So what are the residual habits? Also translated as habitual tendencies. And you know what a residual means, leftover, and habits are habits. And habitual is what is habitual, the repetitive, and tendencies are things that we do without thinking, like subconsciously, right? And then this is not just one lifetime. To call something a certain habit, a residual habit, or habitual tendency, it must have gone on for lifetime and lifetimes. Unresolved issues. Okay. So what is it? According to the explanation of Master Yinshun, they are the habits, tendencies rooted in afflictions. Okay. So they were related to afflictions, but practice over time, when you're dealing with eliminating afflictions, the residual habits remain as habits, but they do not worsen or strengthen the afflictions. Okay, they're just habits. And then let's go into the habits and have some examples, very funny examples. Formed since time without beginning. Okay, so it's not one lifetime. If it's one lifetime, it's easy. It's only a twitch. Oh, I got this twitch. Well, deal with your twitch. That's easy. But if it's the residual habit, oh my goodness, lifetime and lifetimes. Right. So let's look into an example. The disciple arahats. Arahats are liberated one of the fourth fruition. Okay. The first fruition is called entering the stream, right? And then the second, third, and fourth is arhat, right? The fully liberated from the perspective of Sravakayana. Even though they have eliminated afflictions, still possess traces of residual habits. Therefore, during the Buddha's time, there were some disciples who still spoke cruelly to people, like they were just rude when they talk, right? Don't do that. Tuck in your tummy. Don't cross your legs, right? When they correct people, they just come out. They just say it. And then when they correct the trainees, the disciples, the Buddha always spoke softly, kindly, with kind, loving words, because he can handle it, right? But the arahats, they spoke cruelly, some, no, not all of them, some. And they were also so used to crude speech that it escaped their mouth and they did not even notice. Basically, it did not come from afflictions, like they are of hate, right? But I remember, don't get this wrong. It's just like me. I talk sometimes. I don't mean what I say, and I hurt people, but I don't mean it. And no. In our case, ordinary people, sorry, you don't get a pass because you are not an arhat. Okay, we're talking about arhats. Arhats, they do that, and then they don't notice because it's not coming from a place of hatred or enmity. It's actually coming from compassion. They wish well for the other, and the other asks, please teacher, correct me. And they correct, right? And nowadays, when we correct people, oh gosh, oh, my teacher, he has not very good temper. Oh my goodness. I asked him to correct me, but how can he correct me like that? Ooh, wow. Maybe he's not my teacher. Yeah. There were others who squirmed and jumped, lacking composure. Okay, so the Buddha always talk about walking in a very, very balanced, well-mannered, right? The gestures. And then some of them were just awful. And in the most awful example that we know from the Vinaya examples, it's one arahant. He has this tendency to regurgitate his food. He would chew, yum, 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 and then go through, and then he just spits out again, and yum, 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 again. And then some people who sat beside him eating, they got so bothered. I mean, who regurgitate their own food, and then spits it out and chews it back, chews it again, and then what's going on? And so they went to complain to the Buddha, and the Buddha just smiled, go, no, he doesn't do it on purpose, because in his last lifetime, he was a cow. So and that's a residual habit. Okay. And then there were some who stubbornly insisted on their own points of view, and they cannot, basically their own views may be right, may be correct, but they fail to have patience for the beings, in a sense that they realize that someone is acting irrationally, and then they might just cut them off, rather than understanding that the other person is venting out of frustration or whatever. So when they think their view is right, they'll just cut you off. Or I know this, or I can say it. I'll give you an example. I know a master who will sit down on meeting with people, and he will sit down and he will show them a clock. Okay, I have a great clock. His clock is smaller, I remember. Okay, and he will put the clock, and he set 30 minutes. You put it on the table, like that, and then talk. It's your question, he would say to the person. And the person talk. Oh, my husband, my wife, my this, and that. And the master go, I'll do this, do that, very, very, very patiently. And then beep, 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 beep. And he stops the clock, and he gets up and he go, okay, that's the end of today's session. Boom, walks away. So that behavior is okay for arahant, from an arahant's perspective. But from a bodhisattva's perspective, that is considered also a residual habit, a habitual tendency, in the sense that you can care a lot about time, about your own use of time, but you also need to be mindful that you are trying to alleviate suffering of beings. So you cannot do things very abruptly. You need to be tactful, skillful beings. Okay? And then, so do you want to hear another example? I got another example in my head. And I said it in Spanish already. I'll tell it to you. So I remember for many years, my own teacher, Master Yinshun, he is known by the older generation of monks and nuns as, especially the nuns, the master who is always looking at the ground. Basically, he did not look at the face of a woman until he reached 70 or 70 something years old. Before that, because he became a monk at age 9, and then at age 20, he was already teaching in Buddhist Institute in Minnan Foshuyan, in Minnan, in mainland China. And then when he came to Taiwan, he was teaching to Buddhist monks and nuns because his literary skills were so good. But when he gave lecture to the nuns, all the nuns, the venerables, remember, and they told me, he never looked at us. We thought that he didn't like us. And then later on, I remember my own master Zenjin, he explained, he said, I felt that my practice is not to the point that I can actually look at the female form, right? So I decided to just look away, look down. And until he's really sure of himself, then age 70 something or so, he started looking. But there's a problem. He really never learned to smile during his whole lifetime. So this is one thing that I remember. And then if one day I can have a book of my stories with living with Master Zhihan, I will do it. It's so funny. I literally saw him from, like, I was hiding in the corner. I saw him looking at the mirror, practicing how to smile. He was like this. And then he would get to that right smile and then nod. This is it. He had to practice smile. I knew him when he was 80 something years old. He was practicing how to smile because now he's full force bodhisattva practice. So he needed to connect with beings. He needed to show his loving kindness, compassion. So he actually put himself to practice how to smile. So a residual habit could be not knowing how to smile, not smiling, very serious, very stern face. But from the bodhisattva path perspective, that needs to be looked at with more closely, whether that may become a barrier between you and the beings that you're trying to help. Okay. By the way, but don't go around smiling at everyone, please. Don't do that. That's not what I'm saying, okay? Yeah. So we take refuge in and believe in the Buddha, not out of superstition or to seek some kind of familial relationship with the Buddha. Okay, so we take refuge in the Buddha, not out of superstition. What is superstition? When we take refuge in the Buddha and then we are have a superstitious mind. Oh, I practice. I recite the Buddha's name. I recite Amitabha, but he does not come to take me to Pure Land yet. Doesn't work. I recited the Bodhisattva, Buddha. I recited the mantra. I recited whatever. And then we think that whatever I ask for, I should get. And that is superstition. Or to seek some kind of familial relationship with the Buddha. Oh, you know how it is. Appeal to authority. That's the word. Oh, I know so-and-so. I know so-and-so. Oh, I know Buddha Amitabha. I read about the Buddha Amitabha. Oh, I know the Buddha of medicine. Oh, I know this Buddha. I know that Buddha. Like trying to say to people like, oh, I know, I'm close. No, we're not nearly close to any Buddha. We're ordinary beings. Just saying that you know a certain Buddha doesn't make you the same level, right? And then some kind of familial relationship. And it doesn't stop there. People who are superstitious and want to form some kind of relationship, the networking relationship with the Buddhas and all other beings in their altar, oh my goodness, they will put on one corner the Buddha image and then Bodhisattva Kuan Yin. On the right side, there is Hinduism, there's Shiva, there's all these Ganesha, and then on the right side, and there's Guan Gong, and then Taoism, and then I'm just naming the Asian ones, right? How about, and I know someone who put Jesus Christ, and then even Brahma figure, like, the altar is pretty messy. That's not taking refuge. That is being all over the place and thinking that these beings are going to bless you and protect you. That's not taking refuge in the Buddha gem. So being a Buddhist is about taking refuge in and revering the one who is capable of perfecting all merits and virtues, right? So you know about the virtues of a Buddha, which are three main ones: wisdom, compassion, and elimination of all afflictions, right? So he's capable of that. That state of Buddhahood is that. So I aspire towards that. That's what taking refuge towards that state means. The only one who can truly do this is a Buddha. Therefore, we should take refuge in the Buddha and not in non-Buddhist celestial beings, right? And not even mention spirits and ghosts, okay? The virtue of wisdom, the virtue of compassion, and the virtue of eliminating afflictions. The three virtues are equal for all Buddhas. All are completely perfect. One cannot say that this Buddha has a greater vow and that Buddha has a lesser vow, or that Buddha has higher wisdom and greater supernatural power than another Buddha. For if there were differences in greatness between the qualities of the Buddhas, then they would not be perfect. And not being perfect, they could not be called, considered, be deemed Buddhas. It's the highest spiritual state possible in existence, right? It's the highest state of awakening. That's Buddhahood. Therefore, all Buddhas tread the same path and all Buddhas are equal. Okay, so we know that all the Buddhas are equal in their virtues, right? But they have different names, but just different names. Different names highlight different qualities. That's all. When someone is sick and they're reciting, please, Buddha, the medicine Buddha, please help me, right? Help me remain calm and deal with my disease. Because maybe when they have an illness and they're thinking of medicine, Buddha, medicine, in their mind, medicine can deal with illness. But what about someone who is more interested in dealing with the illness of their own afflictions, dealing with greed, hatred, and ignorance? Then all Buddhas, even the name Buddha, is sufficient to help one connect with the Buddha gem. However, according to the sutras, the Buddhas have large or small physical bodies, long or short lifespan, pure or impure lands, more or fewer disciples, and the duration of the correct dharma in the world is also not the same. Okay, so Buddha, in his discourses, Buddha Shakyamuni, he has mentioned that when he sent his disciples with supernatural power to another world, they would look at him and go, well, what is the bug doing here? Beings in that world, what is the bug being here? And they ask their Buddha, who is humongous, right? They're of the humongous bodies, physical bodies. And the Buddha said, oh, don't look down on this little bug of a practitioner. That is a great arhat, Mahamoggallana. You know, he is very, very powerful, right? But in their world, in the world of Buddha Shakyamuni, their physical body is very small, right? So, and then look at in the discourses of Buddha, we already know we're not alone in this universe. There are other beings, other human beings that don't look like us. Human realm doesn't mean that it has to look like us. No, or needs to be able to breathe oxygen. They can breathe sulfur and live, or carbon and live. Yeah, it depends, right? And then more disciples, fewer disciples, or depending how much time they spend in expounding the Dharma. And then the duration of the correct Dharma. It's different too in different Buddhas, in different worlds, right? And then just one example is the duration of some Buddha is shorter because they never formed the Sangha, the community of monastic disciples. And because of that, no one is full-time practicing. And so that it was very difficult to pass on the teaching, and it was very short-lived span of the correct Dharma. Know that this is a manifestation of the skillful means of the Buddhas, and these differences exist to accommodate the dispositions of beings. There is no difference in the true virtues of the Buddhas, and we should not create unfounded distinctions. Oh, like saying, which Buddha do you recite to? And someone said, oh, I recite to the Buddha Kshobhya. Huh? Buddha Kshobhya. I never heard of it. Oh, my Buddha Amitabha is the greatest. My Buddha, medicine Buddha, is the greatest, right? Your Buddha is not so cool like mine. No, you cannot say that. You cannot even think that. No, there is no difference in the true virtues of the Buddhas, right? So I remember, because once I read that Master Zhihan, who lived to be 120 years old, and he's a contemporary Buddhist monk that passed away in 1950 something. And then he did a practice of the 10,000 Buddha names. So there's this Wanfu Mingjing, and then there's a repentance ceremony. So he found a cave somewhere, and he recited one Buddha and did one prostration. Another Buddha, he recited out loud, and another prostration. So reading that, and then I said, okay, I'm gonna do this, and I did it. And then as I was reading, wait a second, all the qualities, virtues that is talking about, it's all about skillful means, about saving sentient beings, is whatever. Wow, literally after 10,000 Buddhas and 10,000 prostrations, I realized that it's talking about Buddha. One for all for one. Okay. So the Master Yinshun says, I have concluded the praise of the virtues of the Buddha gem. Okay. So let's continue now to praising the virtues of the Dharma. Stanza number 8. The dry well and the empty village, old in ruins, silent and uninhabited. The other shore, with woods and springs, is happy. We pay homage to the Dharma, the honored one that relinquishes desires. This is the praise of the virtues of the Dharma gem. The first two verses, okay, these two actually contain two metaphors or analogies that need to be explained separately. Okay, so these are stories found in the Agamas, or in the case of a Nikaya, it's in the Nikayas, in the Pali version. Okay. A dry well refers to a well without water. A person was walking on a deserted plain and carelessly fell into a dry well. Well, he was a curious cat and he fell carelessly. Okay. Luckily, he grabbed a person, right? Grabbed a dry vine inside the well with one hand, preventing him from falling into the bottom. Okay. At the bottom of the well, 4 poisonous snakes with open mouth and sticking tongues were looking at him. Right. Also, there was a rat gnawing at the dry vine, like that, trying to break it off. And it could snap at any time. In this critical condition or situation, looking up, he saw honey dripping on the vine. Yum, yum, yum. Stretched out their tongue to lick the honey, and thus forgot about everything. Forgot everything in the sense that forgot that of the precarious, dangerous situation that he has found himself into at the moment. Even the swarm that came to sting him they ignored in their sweet enjoyment. So while they're licking the honey and then watching the rat gnawing the vine, right? And then being stung at the same time, is enjoying the experience. I wonder what this is talking about. So Master Yinshun explains, this tells us that sentient beings are in the desert of the cycle of birth and death. And due to karmic forces, acquire the body of the five aggregates. Five aggregates being the body and mind. So the body is form, material form. And then the body, the mind, the psychological factor, right, would be sensation, perception, volition, and consciousness. Five aggregates. This, every one of us. The dry vine represents the root of life, meaning your lifespan, right? So the rat gnawing at the dry vine is like the threat of impermanence approaching. It's bound to break, to end. And with every breath that passes, the root of life is closer to breaking, right? So when we are celebrating birthday, happy birthday to you. You have lived for 1 year. You have less with 1 year to live. Happy birthday to you. 1 year less to live. That's what this is talking about. It's almost giving a prime seed thrown to the rat. Thank you. Thank you for gnawing at the dry vine. Regardless of whether it is the well, the dry vine, or the rat gnawing at the vine, all are metaphors or analogies for the oppressive suffering of impermanence. It's happening moment to moment. Therefore, it is said that the well is old and in ruins, meaning this is not new. You've been through this before. It's old and in ruins. The four snakes represent the four great elements that compose the physical body: earth, water, fire, and wind, which is always pulling and pulling in all directions. Our body, we are constantly trying to find an equilibrium to this body. Otherwise, we feel bad. We don't feel good. When the four great elements are not in harmony, a person gets sick and may even die, as if the poison of the snake had been injected. The honey is like the pleasures of the five desires: form, sound, smell, taste, and tactile, like touch, right? The five things that we cling on to all the time. And then we have a little bit of enjoyment, and it just would keep us going further and ignoring the suffering. Okay. In enjoying this small pleasure or the little pleasures in everyday life, people forget that they are in the midst of the oppressive suffering of the impermanence of the cycle of birth and death. They do not care about the swarm that comes to sting them, just as they do not care about the painful consequences of the five desires. If even the great suffering of birth and death is not enough to alert and awaken sentient beings, then they are truly very selfish, extremely selfish. And that's us. That's why we're here. We're here to understand how to connect with the Dharma gem. What is the Dharma gem and how to connect with the Dharma gem? And whatever we learn from the Dharma, we need to apply it. We need to see impermanence all the time. See impermanence, accept impermanence. Does not mean becoming gloomy. No, you don't have to be sad about it, but you need to be clear-headed. Don't be fooled. Don't be a hamster, I always say. everything is set up. And then don't be like the hamster. Just get on the wheel and just run for it, dude. Run. Oh, dudettes. Run. Get tired, get down, eat, drink, go to the washroom. Okay, get back on the wheel again. And not knowing what you're doing with your life. Not having clarity. Okay. So that's the one on the, and thanks to Gemini, I have to give credit where credit's due. I input in everything and boom, bang, here we go. You hold on to the vine and then, no, don't worry. I did not draw this. It could take me a lifetime. This only took 5 minutes. And then here, he's gnawing, right? And then this is honey, right? And then this is the well, right? And then I don't know. I told her to draw 4, but it gave me 6. 4 elements, 4 thing, 4 serpents, right? And then the swarm that coming to sting. And then guess what? I think Gemini realized that there's got to be a rat always also on the side, just and just looking at the show. Yeah, I did not put in the command. I don't know why it's there, but it's there. Okay. If you like, for those of you, at the end of this, if you want it, I'll share it with you. Okay. So let's move on to the next analogy. An empty village refers to a village without people, without inhabitants. Nobody lives there. It's an empty village. Therefore, it is said that to be silent and uninhabited. There was a person who wanted to escape the king's punishment and was passing through an inhabited village, and he thought of staying there overnight and then continuing their escape. Again, there's a difference in person. His escape. Suddenly, he heard a celestial being saying, "Run. This place is frequented by thieves. If you encounter them, you may even lose your life." So this person started running. Okay, so what's this about? This tells us that there are people who wish to escape the control of King Mara. Okay, so just to give you a review, King Mara, where does he live? He lives on it's number 10 in this whole picture, but in the desire sphere, he lives on the number 6 celestial realm, Parinirmita Vashavartin. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the 6th heaven. This is where the King Mara lives, right? And then what does he do? Whenever he sees a practitioner with a certain level, and then maybe being able to attain, whether it's jhana, right, moving up to the first jhana, or it's reducing his affliction so quickly, he gets panic. Why? Because he does not want beings to escape from the desire sphere and then experience the form sphere, the samadhi joy, and then have a notion of the possible nirvana joy in the future. So he's preventing that. So King Mara, is he a bad guy? Like he's a devil with the horns? No, he's not. King Mara is a celestial being. That means that he has his own merits and some virtues, but he owns a club. He's a party animal. He's this is my analogy now. He is a owner of a club. He owns the coolest club with the most beautiful music, everything to keep you busy in the desire sphere. Okay? He does not want you to escape from his club. He wants to keep you in his club and then enjoying yourself. in total ignorance as to your impermanence, as to your suffering. And of course, it's all about the self, the enjoyment, the pleasure that the self experiences. He's in that experience, providing that experience, enticing, inducing, guiding beings to that experience and away from liberation. Okay, so escaping the control of King Mara, okay, and study and practice the Buddha Dharma. However, they fail to guard the gates of the six roots, six faculties of the roots of the sense, or six faculties. The empty village represents the six senses. As the six senses, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind, allow seeing, hearing, perceiving, and knowing, it is generally considered that internally there is a self. But in fact, there's no obtainable self, i.e., it is an uninhabited village. No one lives there. It's a figment of the ego's imagination. The ego thinks that there is a self, a soul lives in that village. Nobody lives there. It's all sunyata. But then why create a figment of imagination of a self? How? And Master Yinshun explained, when these six senses without a self enter into contact with the sixth object, form, sound, odor, taste, touch, and thought, this induces what in the consciousness? The six contaminated consciousness of the senses, eye consciousness, ear consciousness, and then all the six consciousnesses. And that are like thieves. They're like thieves, making you think that someone lives there in that empty village. The six consciousnesses run through the six senses, awakening, pulling up greed where there should be no greed, waking up. I think it's not awakening. I would say waking up anger where there is no anger, and waking up various afflictions that steal the wealth of merits. And because of this, some people fall into evil destinies. It's wakening up. More metaphor. Waking up. Yeah. So, because of our senses, our faculties, the objects that correspond to faculties, and the thieves that lies in the consciousness, we imagine, I'm angry. That person stepped on my territory. I need to defend myself, my ego. And then we attack. Oh, I have something that person has. And then greed, right? And all this time thinking that greed, hatred, things, all phenomena are real and permanent. And because of our greed, hatred, and ignorance generated through this imagination of this self-identity, this clinging to self-identity, then we hurt beings. We commit transgressions that will lead into the rebirth into evil destinies, such as asuras, hungry ghosts, animal, or even hell beings. Therefore, those who wish to escape the domain of King Mara of the three spheres being desire, form, and formless spheres, study and practice the Buddha Dharma. In this way, they should not be deceived by the six senses and should advance until they reach a safe state. Safe state. Where is that safe state? Okay, so we'll keep exploring. The aforementioned fugitive, after leaving the empty village frequented by thieves, advanced to the border of the kingdom where a great river blocked his way. And those pursuing him by the king's order were almost catching up. At that moment, he saw the other shore. He can see the other shore of the great river, which did not belong to the jurisdiction of the state's kingdom. There were gardens, woods, and springs, wonderful scenery on the other shore. And it was indeed a safe and happy place. Without hesitation, he swam across the great river, leaving behind the fear of death, and finally could rest. So, being pursued, chased after, coming to a place where I need to get on the boat, a transport to get me across this river and then to the other shore. The other shore is the safe state. This metaphor tells us that those who study the Buddha Dharma, who are not deceived by the six senses and who cross the great river of birth and death, only then do they surpass the state of King Mara and reach the other shore of Nirvana. So usually we say this shore is the cycle of birth and death. We call it samsara. And then the other shore is Nirvana. Then they can enjoy the happiness of quiescence and cessation, which neither arises nor ceases, and reach a stage of great rest. So quiescence is a very archaic word that nobody uses, but it's the only word that approximates the word in Chinese, 寂灭的寂, and cessation, 灭. So when we see quiescence or cessation, we are usually referring as to the nirvana, the state of liberation. Above, I explained that all actions are impermanent, that all phenomena are non-self. You see, the first analogy is about impermanence. The second analogy is about non-self or no self. All phenomena are non-self. And that nirvana is quiescence and cessation. These are the three seals of the Dharma. Seals meaning three things, three ideas that will certify if a teaching is fully revealed or partially revealed. Okay? Three seals of the Dharma, 三法印. And these, which are the three great truths of the Buddha Dharma. Therefore, nirvana is realized through impermanence and non-self, being the ultimate refuge for all nobles, all liberated ones. Okay? When we see the word noble, it means liberated ones. This is exactly the Dharma gem in which we should take refuge, pay homage to, and respect. Lay people who practice concentration can also rid themselves of a portion of afflictions, such as desires. So through concentration, right, whether it's pre-jhana, first to fourth jhana, different concentrations, you can get a glimpse, like a taste of what it is when you don't feel a portion of affliction, such as desires, right? And then having access to that knowledge, the taste of it will make you understand that whatever pleasure that you've been experiencing in the human realm, in the mundane things, is nothing compared. And according to the Buddha, the highest so-called joy, happiness in a sense of a sensation, like you feel excitation, it's the state of the third jhana, right? That's when one feels something beyond that of a mundane worldly pleasures. Okay. Whereas the noble ones of the three vehicles, and the three vehicles are referring to the vehicle of Sravaka, Pracheka Buddha, and Bodhisattva vehicle. Vehicle meaning a transport that will take you from here to there. All the vehicles are on the path to Buddhahood, okay? But you, depending on the vehicle, it will take you to a certain place and no more. So that's a Shravaka, a Pracheka Buddha, but Bodhisattva take you all the way to final destination, Buddhahood. But in order to practice these three vehicles, we need to practice the virtues and also moralities as a human being. So there's the human, celestial. Those are the two other vehicles, the human vehicle and the celestial vehicle, right? And in total, they're called the five vehicles, right? So whereas the noble ones of the three vehicles who attain nirvana through wisdom are those who definitely relinquish all desires, okay? For all those who relinquish desires, nirvana is the most honorable and supreme attainment. Therefore, the Dharma gem is said to be the honored one that relinquishes desires. The honored one that relinquishes desires, that let go, detaches, is not clinging to desire. Okay, so I'm done with today's explanation, and we're not done yet with the praises to the Dharma gem. We'll continue in the next lecture next week. Let's do transference of marriage first. I wish to eradicate the three obstructions and all defilements. I wish to attain wisdom and true understanding. I wish that all calamities and obstacles be universally extinguished. I shall constantly practice the Bodhisattva path life after life. Namo Pho. So Amy is also a practicing Bodhisattva, very beginner, right? But she is very Buddhist. Say hello.
Hello.
Hello. Okay.
Hi, Amy.
Okay.
Hey, các mama ni hả?
Hey. Yeah. Hey. Yeah. So my mother is making unannounced visits in my Zoom thing. And I told her, do that at the end, Q&A. Don't come in. Because while I'm talking, I'm really into it. And then here, there's this old lady walking towards me. It feels like, like a shark. No. Okay, bye-bye. Okay, okay. So thank you very much, and good night. Until next Wednesday.
Thank you.
So you guys can ask any more questions. Okay, done. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.